Welcome back to the Garden Hutch. Today we'll discuss week 27 of 2022. Let's get going. What can I say? Week 27 was hot. That's about all you can say about it. It was really dry. We've been watering every day. So if you haven't been, I highly recommend watering every day. We've learned a lot about our gardens through this whole process. It's kind of nice, we just built the raised beds, and then we have a summer like this where there's a whole lot of challenges. Things aren't quite what we would call normal in my area. It's already 100 degrees multiple times. The heat index has been over 100 degrees every day for probably 3 to 4 weeks. As a gardener, your whole job is to adapt to what's happening around you, to help your plants overcome the challenges, to make sure your plants are doing what you want them to do. Or in this case, sometimes this time of year, the most important thing is helping them survive until you get a break in the weather. So I thought what we would do today is we'll take a little tour around the different gardens and let you know what challenges we're doing, what our plans are, that sort of stuff. But to begin with, let's take a look at a picking we did earlier this week. So just one of the days this week, week 27, you can see our beef masters here. They're starting to come off pretty good. We're getting several slicing cucumbers daily. We're able to put up, every 2 days, we're able to put up, I think 2 to 3 jars of pickles. And then of course the Romas and the cherry tomatoes. We roast the Romas and the cherry tomatoes with these peppers. We put them away. So far we've done about 13 meals for the winter time already, and obviously we're eating them daily as well. And then the ground cherries just continue to be fantastic. I trimmed them up and we had a bit of a lull there when I trimmed them, but since then they have just bounced back really well. So from now on I'll be trimming them much earlier in the year. So the top garden has done really well. I mentioned earlier that one of the things that we have really paid attention to are the lessons, the things that these new raised beds, the things that worked really well, but also the things that we have to improve on. And right off the bat, one of the things that we realized going into this month is we absolutely are going to have to put some sort of netting or wiring around these beds to keep the chickens out. There's a couple reasons for this, right? Like, number one, you can see that as we've preached about before on these raised beds, we left about 6 inches from the top of the compost, and the reason for that was that chickens could get in there and they couldn't scratch our compost out. We could go through, smooth it out, that sort of stuff. So we're not just wasting a resource. Well, that does happen, and we're not wasting compost, but one of the unintended consequences is because the sun comes, and you can see it's morning now, so the sun is going to come in on the left side over here is the east side, and it's going to work its way through to the west. So on the front lips of these beds, it creates a sun barrier, right? So the inside of the beds, they don't get sun for much later in the day, and it's a very short amount of sun as opposed to the 10 hours or so that we originally anticipated. I was going to move on, but I just wanted to show you can see this deal here, how it kind of got tall and leggy, and that was a result of what I was talking about as far as not filling the beds. So anyway, we'll invest and we'll make sure that we fill these all the way to the top. The only thing about doing that is we will have to put some sort of screen on the outside of it to prevent the chickens from getting in. But you live and you learn. Our cucumbers are doing well, so it's not like we haven't gotten anything out of these gardens. They've done really well overall, but not quite what we were expecting. Next year, we feel like if we get them full, everything will be much taller. Especially the deal plants, they won't be quite as spindly. You can also tell another benefit is the chickens down here, they won't eat the plants when they're coming up, but for some reason they wear these little leaves out. They just peck them and move on. They don't even really eat them, but they do this to the cucumbers, and they also do it to our butternut squash over here, our winter melons. So that creates a whole nother thing because they'll get in here and scratch, and they killed one of our butternut squash. They've also killed one of our spaghetti squash. They broke the stem off while they were scratching around. So Anyway, so that's a lesson learned. We won't do that. We'll just put, kind of like we do with our little garlic beds. You know, you can put 18 inches or so around it, and you can still get inside the bed, but it prevents the chickens from flying over. So this is part of the remnants that we had of a squash bug outbreak that took the leaves off of several of our butternut squash. Also, if you'll remember, we had a whole plant coming through here. That was the one that was all the way over the top of the trellis, is the one they broke off at the bottom, so we had to remove it. We didn't lose any of the butternut squash though, so the one that is the most prolific over here on this side, it hasn't actually grown over the top. It sort of went up and doubled back down on this front side, probably to get more of the sun. So the cucumbers are doing quite well. As you could see earlier in the video, we are probably putting up, I don't know, 2 to 3 jars of pickles every other day or so. We anticipate that going up as the summer goes along. Your cucumbers love the heat as long as they have the moisture. So that's why we said earlier, we've gone to watering every day. So, and these guys are starting to put off some. We've got some Roma tomatoes and some Rutgers tomatoes through here. You know, they're, again, because of the way we have the trellis system set up, they don't have as much sun, but that was intended. We knew by the time the other tomatoes were in the full sun, they stopped, their flowers stopped setting. We were hoping these would. So it's worked out okay so far. We'll find out how much the production of these, if it pays off or not. And if not, then we'll plant something else here next year. As the heat has kicked in, our sweet potatoes have started to take over, and they're doing exactly what we hoped from the start, right? We were talking about here, and then we hoped the sweet potatoes would come down and then just fill up as much of this by the end of the year as they could. So that's working out pretty well. We really are enjoying the sweet potato leaves. We put some on pizza. It was delicious. You can saute them. You can use them exactly like you would spinach. So that's what we've been doing. Any recipe that I've had that I use fresh spinach in, I use these leaves the same way, whether it calls for raw, sauteed, or baked, whatever. And it's worked out really well. What's up, Red? Before we moved on, I did again want to show that we are, you know, now that it's hot, you can guarantee these guys are going to start soon. So you can see these eggplant are starting to set. We have several of them. So anyway, the eggplant are paying off. We have almost every one of them either have eggplant set or are starting to set them. So that's working out. And then down through here, these yellow squash, they're putting off well. The problem we're running into is, let me show you, as the weather gets worse and worse, the chickens, I guess because they have nothing else like green that's growing in the yard or whatever, they are just wearing out these squash in here. So again, that just reiterates the point that we are going to have to go through and add the some of the fencing around the outside of these raised beds. But overall, it has been worth it. So we've gotten a lot of squash. As the heat, of course, has set in, the squash have stopped producing. So anybody who watches the channel, we'll see those in a bit. But we do have a bunch of squash ready to go in the ground. The problem is, if you put them out now, they're just going to get scorched. They're not really going to be able to produce. So we're trying to push that off and keep them in a favorable environment until we just have to make the decision to put them in the ground. While we're on our way over here to the top garden, I just wanted to show another project we got completed this week. With the heat, a lot of our blackberries, the old brambles, had died back. So we wanted to go through, we do it about every 2-3 years is what we do. You know, we'll let it build up on the backside sort of as a support system. But eventually what happens is you get so much back there that it becomes kind of a haven for bugs and insects and that sort of stuff. So what we did was we just kind of, where all the berries were done, I just went ahead and took all of that back. One thing I wanted to point out here is that if you're like us and through the year you have a bunch of branches and that sort of thing that come down, we have a bit of a burn pile that we establish outside. But anyway, if you have that, make sure you check with your local fire department before you burn. I know in Arkansas now, almost all of our counties are in burn bans. So just something to keep in mind. While we're here, let's take a look inside of the top garden. So this was, those of you who keep up with the channel will know, we had zucchini here. We got a lot of zucchini. They just got burned up, and really what happened was they were just stopped producing, and we were putting a lot of effort into keeping them alive. So I decided to take them out and sort of put in something that would be productive. So all of our beans are starting to come up, so they'll be productive. They do well during the heat, so that's fine. Back here we have, you know, the tomato plants. They're still looking good. We've been picking about every second to third day. We'll pick enough Romas, Beefmaster, and cherry tomatoes to put up anywhere from 5 to 10 bags of tomatoes. So again, we like to roast ours with peppers, and we keep them in the freezers. We bag them for individual meals, keep them in the freezer, take them out during the winter time. So that's not to say we also eat tomatoes every day. We keep our normal tomato and cucumber salad in the refrigerator, and we also have, you know, cherry tomatoes and such with our salads daily. So but this time of year, it's really nice to go ahead, and when you have extras, if you can put as much of that in the freezer, it's going to pay off for us come the winter time. And I guess really that's what homesteading's all about. So we're also, as you can see, we got these nice big beautiful purple hulls. We can have fresh purple hulls for dinner. It goes well with some ham and cornbread. Problem is, it's been way too hot for any of that kind of food. So what we'll do is we're going to go through, we have these, and then we have all the peas down there in the big garden as well. So we're going to wait till we get a big old batch of them in a cool evening, and then we'll go through and have those. Excuse me. Also, just real fast, you can see over here that the bed over there for the tomatoes, those guys are still holding off too. Again, we fertilized it, and we continue to water it like we do everything else. Pole beans are doing well. We're starting to get beans off of them. Leslie and I were talking about this. We are getting a lot of beans, but it's not more than what we get off the bush beans. So as fun as the whole project was to build and all that sort of stuff, I don't think I'll do pole beans next year. I think I'll do all of like these bush beans, you know, these of course being the purple hull peas, and then these over here are the Blue Lake bush beans. And I think that's what we'll grow next year, only because this over here has kind of, I think, made my Beefmaster tomato plants really leggy. In some ways, I think the reason we're getting so many tomatoes off of that, though, is because it offers a bit of shade. I also think, though, that it's kind of made it where the plants themselves are not quite, the stems, you know, aren't quite as, I guess, sturdy as I would like them to be. It doesn't matter because we have the, you know, the posts and stuff to put up there. But overall, I think next year what I'll do is we'll move this bed over here to a permanent bush bean bed, and then we're going to have more of the golden wax beans next year. So all we're going to do next year is right there will be the golden wax beans the entire year. Right there will be our bush beans the entire year, and then we'll have these two tomato beds right through here. And then what I'll do is I'll use where these purple hull peas are here, we'll use that as our cabbage bed in the fall and in the spring. And then during this part of the summer or whatever, we might grow something like chard, and, you know, something that puts off quite a bit, but can be easily grown and taken out without much loss as far as a financial investment. Before we do a quick tour of the pallet garden, I just wanted to stop and remind everybody, behind us, this is where it kind of all started. We got more food out of this pallet garden the last 2 years than we have any other spot in our entire homestead. The reason I bring that up now is because what we've learned is we've learned that you have to water. Now, I know I said it before that we're doing it every day, but one of the things I realized from last year going into this year is last year during the summertime, or during the heat of the summer, we weren't getting as much food. You know, we weren't able to eat a salad daily. We weren't getting tomatoes every day. We weren't just getting the things that we wanted. So this year, what we do is we actually go out and we just put our finger in it every day to find out if we need to water. And when it's over that 100-degree mark, we have to water every single day. And the reason I bring that up is when we go through to look at this, everything is doing so well. I just don't want to do like a false advertising type thing and say that it doesn't take any effort or anything. It does take a lot of fertilizing and a lot of water to keep gardens where they're productive when you have over 100-degree heat for several days in a row and there's no rain. So as we had mentioned last week, our corn is coming along really well, and it is also seems to be a very thirsty plant. Like I said, we've never really grown corn because in our area, it's just so cheap. Everybody grows it. It always seemed like it was better to just buy it from somebody than grow it yourself. But we were trying these little small 4x4 pallet gardens, and what we're hoping is that we can grow a lot in a little bit of area. And if that's the case, it would be worth having fresh corn on the homestead if we can do it in that small area. As you saw at the first of the video, we are still picking these peppers. In fact, we went through this morning and picked all the big ones so that we could roast them with tomatoes today. And as you can see, these things are just loving the heat. So from now on, these will absolutely be part of our garden. For those who don't know, this is the first year we had grown the banana peppers. Also, you can see our watermelons and cucumbers are doing well. We've had some of these older leaves right here. They're kind of dying off. They get kind of sensitive to the sun, right? Like, it's been, like I said, it's been stupid hot, really sunny every day, hardly any cloud cover. But we'll go talk to Les here in a minute about these guys. We are really surprised with how well they've done up to this point in the heat. And of course, the rock star bed of the entire year so far, kale is still putting off every day. Now the heat, we lost 2 kale plants. We lost one back there and we lost one right over here. And I think what happened was, in our raised beds, I think they started to settle underneath a little bit, because this one here in the corner, I don't know if you can see over here along the edges though, I think what happened was some of the dirt fell and it disturbed the roots, and then combined that with the heat, kind of took it out. And we had a third one in this line up here, and I'm not sure if it was just the heat solely. I think a lot of it had to do with getting shaded out. These other two though, they're doing really well. They're putting off enough for us to have salad daily, you know, especially in conjunction with this chard. So keep in mind, we've already picked today. So, and then so far, one of our favorite parts, I should say, of this garden have been these cherry tomatoes. Those of you who pay attention to the channel know what we've been doing is we've sort of, you know, we let them bush at the bottom, and then once the tomatoes set, we'll thin them out and move them up. We did the same thing with this second tier that's going through here. So right now we actually have 3 different tiers of cherry tomatoes. We have the, you know, these down here that are finishing ripening. Up here, these have just started to be picked. And then up here, you can see we have all the new ones setting. The thing about these cherry tomatoes is we simply have to pick them every single day. And we try to eat as many of them as we possibly can. We weren't really planning on canning or freezing a bunch of these guys, but we simply can't eat them all daily. So tomatoes are my favorite. So we've started roasting them with peppers and putting them sort of in, you know, like servings for 2 for, you know, Les and I. And we're going to try and see how that goes in the wintertime. But better to try it that way and make sure they're preserved than it is wasting them.
So as Jeremy was saying, you know, the weather's been awful. It's been super hot, but the one good thing that happens when it's hot is melons. And we wanted to show you how many we picked. This morning we got 4 cantaloupe and 1 watermelon. And the cool part about these is you can cube them up, put them on parchment paper, flash freeze them for about 5 hours, and then you can simply just take them when they're frozen solid, put them in a Ziploc bag, and they'll keep up to 8 to 12 weeks in the freezer. So if you have too many melons at once, just know that you can freeze it and you have time to eat it later on.
I just wanted to wrap up this week's vlog with a few updates. We are starting to get eggs, believe it or not, from the baby chickens. They're small and they're very few and far between, but they're coming like 3 weeks early. So I don't know if it's something to do with the weather being off or whatever. But that's, you know, that's a surprise. They're starting to eat a lot more out of the yard, getting more independent, starting to scavenge more. So our food bill is going down a little bit more than what it was when they were hanging out in the coop all day before they went out. So that's another good thing. A few things on the fruit trees, our apples and pear trees. Now, we are watering them once a month. I'm not sure if that's going to be enough to save them or whatever. I just simply don't know enough about watering fruit trees and how much that's going to take. At this point, I just want to water them enough to keep them alive if we can. So anyway, I think that's about it. If you've made it to the very end, I just want to say thank you. We do appreciate it. If you like this video, consider hitting the like button. If you have not, consider subscribing to the channel. It really does help us out, and it's free for you. Until next time, I hope that all you folks take care of yourselves. Peace.